Welcome to Behind the Confident Smile. I am your host, Bianca Cotton, and today I am joined by the lovely Rachael Stewart. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Today, we are talking about the sudden loss of a parent. Rachael lost her mom at the age of 9. And Rachael, one, thank you for allowing us to open that chapter of your life.
Yeah.
And I want to know from you, going back to your early childhood, your earliest memory of your mother.
That's a good one. I have a very vivid memory of my childhood. So many great memories. So probably paper dolls were a thing. It was early 90s. So playing paper dolls, and I was the only child back then. And so, playing paper dolls and being around my mom and my dad, and just so many activity. My mom and I did a lot of activity. She was a stay-at-home mom, and so we did everything together.
How did it feel doing everything together with your mom?
It was amazing. It could be irritating sometimes because, when you got the classroom mom and you have you gotta be here for everything, especially if I'm acting up and stuff like that. Girl Scouts, classroom, field trips, she was just always there. We always were going places. And so it was great. I just had a constant best friend.
That's beautiful, a constant best friend.
Mm-hmm.
It's not too many people who would say that about their mom. Mm-hmm. So I can only imagine what that moment was like when your mother passed.
Yeah.
Do you remember that moment when you were told that your mother had passed? Like, where were you?
So it's a little bit traumatic. I was the one who found her, actually. So I went to school that morning, and, actually I was going to stay home from school, but I think God probably protected me in that sense. Went to school, came back, couldn't find my keys. I was trying to get in the house and everything. We lived on the 3rd floor, walked up. My brother was actually there with her. He was 2 at the time, and got into the house, and unfortunately, she was on the floor, so I was trying to rouse her and everything. My uncle stayed in the building, so had him call the ambulance, and my dad, he beeped my dad because again, it was the 90s. He beeped my dad, and we were trying to get him, I will never forget that day.
How did you feel in that moment when you were trying to wake your mom up?
I think it was just an out-of-body experience. It was a lot of shock, and, of course, fear, and trying to also, make sure my brother was okay, because he's a baby. But I think also, as I think back on it, a level of preparation. My mom had some health complications, nothing that I knew was going to be that serious, but she would always tell me, if you ever, something happens, call 911 or do the thing. So I knew, how to, do the responsible things in a lot of situations. My mom prepared me for life so very young. It was just an out-of-body experience.
Just sitting with that, right, as a 9-year-old girl, do you remember, what happened after that, or is it a blur?
No, very vivid.
Wow.
It was, so after the paramedics came, eventually my dad wound up getting there. My dad went to the hospital. I don't remember who dropped me off at my aunt's house. Might have been my dad, but I got dropped off at his sister's house. And I remember then I was sitting at her kitchen table doing math homework. Hate math. And so that made me, dislike it even more. But was doing math homework. I heard my aunt get a phone call and kind of say, oh, how old was she? And so immediately I knew. And then my aunt kind of told me, I'm sorry, your mom passed. And that was kind of it. There wasn't a comfort. I don't even remember if she gave me a hug. I just remember crying, looking down at that math homework and being okay, well, I'm not going to do this, anymore. And I think I just laid down or something. I know we stayed at my aunt's house for a few days, but it was, after that, it becomes a little bit of a blur of the things. But that, I definitely just remember kind of the lead up to the confirmation, that she was gone.
I can only imagine what it was like to go back to school the next day.
Well, I didn't go back the next day.
But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
after, like, you returned and your world is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And now your family that you once knew of is no longer.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
It was a journey. I think there was a lot of uncertainty, like sometimes not knowing, like, okay, we're going to be I know we stayed at my grandma's house for a little bit, but my dad was working all the time. My mom was home with me all the time. So he had to really reconfigure what life looked like, and who was going to take care of us. I can credit him now that he really made an effort to make sure we were going to be taken care of, and he wanted to keep us around. So, definitely salute to him for trying to figure it out with 2 young children, because he really wasn't like that. He was the fun parent, but not necessarily the I'm raising you parent, But yeah, I mean, it was just a completely new normal, trying to figure out, how to dress myself, how to do my hair, how to, completely do things at, 9. 9 is so young.
We discussed this prior to this interview. As you were in your teenage years, there was a breakdown within your family when you were 14, where you were moved or pushed out of your home. Can you talk a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, so to rewind it a little bit, I had a stepmother who came in. She moved in a month after my mom's funeral. So that was a very, again, jarring thing. I had met her very recently, so I didn't really know her. She started living with us. And again, in hindsight, I know my dad really needed somebody to take care of my brother because he was 2, But we just did not gel well. We got into conflict a lot. We argued a lot. And so it just got to a point where I just was miserable, was reaching out to my family. My family came to do an intervention. My mom's family came to do an intervention, and my dad was like, y'all can take her then. So it was like a literally not planned at all, pack whatever you can real quick and then go, and not knowing where I was supposed to go, who I was going to live with, anything. And that was when I was 14. And thankfully, one of my mother's sisters wound up taking me in, and I lived with her. I still consider her my mother and call her mom and everything. And I moved in with her family when I was 14.
When you reflect on that moment now in your adulthood, what comes up for you?
I think I wish that the conversation would have happened, but I also realized I think my dad probably felt a lot of fear about maybe being blamed or not really wanting the confrontation that maybe he was doing something wrong or wasn't in control of the situation. But I think that conversation could have been so helpful of just like, hey, this is what's going on with Rachael. These are the things that we can create a community to help with. But that conversation, just didn't happen. So I know it was originally in the plan for me to, if anything ever happened to my mom, for me to go to the sister that I went with. I found that out as an adult. But again, I still, I didn't know back then. And I just knew that, I just wanted to be wanted wherever I was at.
And during this time, did you ever receive grief counseling or anyone try to talk you through?
Kind of. I remember we had a family friend who was a reverend, and so I sat down with her, but it was very one time, I had family talk to me, but even back then, I learned how to put on a protective shell very, very quickly, where I was just like, I'm fine, I'm adjusting fine, and so I don't think really people understood, or even I understood, the depth of my grief back then. I pretty much just, I was Susie Sunshine to everybody. Everybody called me, oh, you're this little ray of sunshine. And I felt that was the role I had to take on. And so I really didn't let a lot of people see my grief. And I didn't probably start dealing with it until my 20s, of recognizing you never really processed that.
In that moment in your 20s, what led you to that place?
Having a child. So I had my daughter when I was 21, and I was like, holy crap, I don't know what does this look like? Because most people, they have their mothers around, right, to go through pregnancy and to go through, the initial phases. And I just remembered, I don't have what everybody else has. I don't have a mom who's going to come stay with me after I leave the hospital. I don't have a mom who's going to be in the delivery room with me. And it was very isolating. And so, again, it was just like, I think that's when I really realized, like, okay, something's different, and I need to process everything that I'm feeling.
And what did that process look like?
It was a long process, for sure. But I think it was just, that honestly probably didn't happen until when I was like 30.
Oh.
So another, maybe 10 years later, when I was pregnant with my second child, and I was like, I turned 30, I was pregnant with my second child, and I was like, once again, I don't have a mother figure around. And my former mother-in-law and I had just kind of stopped talking, and I was like, I'm doing this alone all over again. And I realized I needed a village. And so I was very intentional about I have a cousin who is my mother's best friend, and so talking to her and trying to say, I don't have to do this alone. So what does this look like to create a different experience?
You don't have to do it alone. Yeah. And I want you to talk to that little girl, right? The 9-year-old you, the 14-year-old you, and even the 20-year-old you. What would you tell them now?
That's a great question. I see you, and you're wanted. I think those were the things that they really needed to hear.
And so in your work, because I know you're a therapist, or one of your professions, do you work with clients that have similar backgrounds, or are they gravitated towards you because of your personal experiences?
Probably. I mean, I do have a lot of clients who have dealt with very severe losses, and loss comes in so many different forms. So whether it was loss of a relationship, loss of an actual person, loss of a role maybe that they once held. And so I do find that I can really connect with those clients on a very deep basis, because that's been my lived experience, in a lot of different areas of my life.
That was my question. Like, how does your profession, how has it been informed by your lived experience? And as you continue to unpack grief and loss.
Yeah. I think it helps me to have, obviously, a level of empathy, of knowing, when you kind of feel like, I don't know what comes next. I've lost a parent. I've had a divorce. I've, lost really significant relationships in my life. And so I've been in that experience where it's like, I have no clue the next step. I don't know where to start. And sometimes the starting place is just telling someone that, and I think that's what therapy is for a lot of people, is I have never voiced some of these things before, and now I have a voice to talk about the things that have happened to me and who I am because of those experiences, but also who I want to be because of those experiences.
That's good. I want to circle back to the relationship with your stepmom and your dad. Now that you are an adult, what does that relationship look like now versus how it was then?
Yeah, we have done a lot of work. Thank God. So the easy one is my dad. I mean, I think I have always, he's my only surviving parent, so I've always felt very close. I mean, I was a daddy's girl, I'm his only biological daughter, and so I'm the oldest, and so I've always been a daddy's girl. But I think we have such a sweet relationship now, especially because he is no longer involved in, some of the addictions that he previously had. And so he's so much more clear-minded to be able to have and cultivate a loving relationship with me, with my children. But that took a lot of intentional work. We're also living in close proximity. I live in the building that he owns, and so we get to see each other a lot, and so that helps. When it comes to my stepmom, we have a very neutral relationship, I'll call it that. When I had my daughter, my stepsister was pregnant at the same time. So, we got the experience kind of a bonding over motherhood together a little bit. Still very casual, though. We're cordial, but it's not deep, and I've tried to create a little bit of a deeper relationship over the years, but it just hasn't happened, and I have peace with that.
Before you made peace with that, did that feel like another loss for you?
Oh, absolutely.
With a mother figure?
Absolutely. It felt like a rejection, because it was like, why am I not good enough for you to see me as a daughter, or want to have this deep relationship with me? But kind of what we talked about, I recognized that I didn't see a whole lot of depth in her other relationships, and so I couldn't take it personal. I was like, maybe that's just not what she does. Maybe this is the best that she can give me, and I'm going to accept whatever she can at the capacity that she has.
The acceptance piece is what I hear arising from this conversation. Yes, there was significant grief and loss, but coming into an acceptance, even in the midst of pain.
Yeah.
And having your own children and saying, you know what, why am I trying to do this by myself?
Yeah.
How do you think your daughter sees you?
I always joke with her that I'm a cool mom. And she's like, Mom, if you say you're a cool mom, you're not cool. But I'm like, yeah. But so one of the things I loved about my mom was she was so playful. And she was like one of those moms that's like, if I'm playing Barbie, she's getting down on the ground with me and playing Barbies too. And so I think that's how I tried to fashion myself as a mother of like, I want to enter into my children's world. And so I would hope that my daughter would think that I'm very approachable, that we can talk about anything, and that she enjoys spending time with me, that I'm silly, and all that. And I ask her and remind her often of, you can tell me if this isn't working for you, our relationship, like tell me if I'm doing something wrong or if, because I'm like, I don't have framework for this, she's about to be 12 and I'm like, my experience with what a mother-daughter relationship looked like ended a couple of years ago, so you have to teach me how to be the best mom for you too.
That's very mature.
Yeah.
Like a very mature response to help create that mother-daughter relationship and give your daughter the space to ask for what she needs. And where does that stem from?
I honestly don't know. I think I just really wanted to create my own view of parenting, I guess, where I recognize, and probably some of my profession too, recognizing developmentally, kids might be at a certain place, but they are people too, just like us, right? And so they have the same emotions that we do. They just come in little packages, and so being able to recognize she's going to feel the same things that I was feeling, at 9, at 10, at 11, even some of the things I feel now in my 30s. And so being able to just kind of level with her and say, tell me what you're feeling. Tell me how the things that we're doing are affecting you. And tell me a little bit about the life that you want to create. And then what's my place in that? Again, I'm a therapist, so I probably explore a lot of those, emotions very, more often than most people. But I will say it's been effective. And I think that it has created such a openness and transparency between the two of us that I absolutely love.
I love that. Taking notes,
Yeah.
mental notes. I really want to know, like, gleaning from your experience with losing your mom at 9, what advice would you give a surviving parent who may have just experienced that and now they're trying to figure out, like, how to navigate the world without their significant other and still raise their children?
To allow your children to see your grief. My parents were together since they were 14. My mom died when she was 44. So they were together 30 years. They were high school sweethearts. And I know that my dad was so affected. I'm like, this is a person you've literally known almost your entire life. You see them reflected in your kids. So if he would have invited us, I think, into his grief a little bit more, that could have created such a different dynamic and a closeness that really would have been beautiful, of being able to talk about her memory, talk about, so I would just really encourage the surviving parent. As hard as it might be, sometimes as adults, we want to protect children from things, but sometimes we have to teach them how to grieve appropriately, and so being able to do that just by having a conversation of, I'm really sad today. How are you feeling? Can be a game changer.
And you said something key, grieving properly. So expound on that as we wrap up this conversation. How does one grieve properly?
Yeah, it looks different for everybody. So listening to what your body and your heart needs and then giving it that. In the healthiest way possible. So obviously not addictions or, things like that. But if it's like, I can't do anything today and I just need to lay in bed, give yourself that. It's really gifting yourself with whatever you need and honoring your emotions. And that's how you grieve. properly.
And how have you grieved?
By talking about, my mom and celebrating her. And I think by just sharing and creating legacy in my family, I make myself a safe space for other people to grieve as well, because I think sometimes people can tiptoe around you if they're not sure, like, oh, it's her birthday, it's Mother's Day, how are you feeling? And I'm like, you can tell me how you're feeling too, thank you for being there for me, but let me also be there for you, because just as I had this loss, you did too. And I think that collective grief can be very healing.
Thank you, Rachel,
Thank you.
for everything that you shared with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
My pleasure.